welcome. I'm excited that you're here. Today's topic is interesting. I don't know if you remember, but a few weeks ago, I posed this question. The question was this: what scares you the most, or what are you most afraid of in your relationship, in your marriage? And there are so many different answers. One of them, which we already answered, was, Amanda, I fear that I'm letting my spouse down, that I'm going to disappoint them. And we talked about that you absolutely would disappoint them, but what you do after you disappoint them or betray them or let them down is what matters most. If you watched that one, go check it out. And so today we're going to be talking about, which was another sort of the second most picked answer was, Amanda, what most scares me is that nothing will ever change in my marriage. My spouse will never change. Everything will be the same. And I will continue to live in this awful, dreadful, mediocre marriage day in and day out. Now, before we start, I want to send a message because, if you're not watching me now, then you're watching me when this has already been recorded. And if that's you, I want to compel you to come to our live to participate with us so that you can ask your questions on the spot, so that you can get answers on the spot. But if you're here now in our live, participate with us. I actually have tons of questions that I gathered over the weeks from couples, asking different things, over the years, and things that people have asked specifically for this live about, Amanda, what if my spouse never changes? Well, then what? And so I'm going to go through some of these questions with you guys here tonight. And if you have a similar question, then great. I hope it's answered for you. But if you have a question that has not been asked, please, please, please answer it. Renee is going to be looking at the Instagram account there, at the Facebook account all at once. He's going to be like omnipresent, and he's going to just be looking at everything and trying to get your answers straight to me. But don't worry, we're trying to find a way that I can have you on the palm of my hands so that I can see your questions, okay?
Issues with Facebook and YouTube. Tell them to go to Instagram.
Oh man, so I guess we're having issues with Facebook and YouTube. So go to Instagram. If your friend typically watches on Facebook or YouTube, tell them to come to Instagram. Renee's upset over there. It's okay, babe. We'll do it on Instagram. It'll be filmed. It'll be recorded. And later, you will be able to watch it on YouTube. So those of you who are on Instagram, here we go. So I don't know about you, but some issues, some of the things that you think, Amanda, my spouse will never change. See if you can find yourself in some of these categories. For some of my couples, it's the issue of punctuality, where the husband is always late and the wife is always early, or vice versa. It's some of the things that you think, my husband will never change, or my wife will never change. They are always late. Is punctuality one of those things that bothers you and your spouse? What about the issue of finances? Oh man, that's a big one that always comes up. My spouse will never change. They keep wasting money on nonsense. We can't ever seem to save anything. I want to own a house. I want to save for my retirement funds. And my spouse does not understand the concept of saving. I always talk to him. I always talk to her. I don't understand. What is the issue? Maybe for you, it's the fact that you are an extrovert and your spouse is an introvert. So you want to go out with friends on the weekends, and your spouse much rather just stay home and cuddle up and watch a movie. As I had a wife recently told me, my husband is like an old man, and he's not even old. He's like in his 30s. I have to beg him and plead with him to go out. Amanda, we fight about this all the time. I want to go out. I want to be with my friends. All he wants to do is stay home like an old man and go to bed early, and I hate it. Maybe it's, oh man, this is a good one. This is a big one. Maybe it's because you're clean and organized, and your spouse, he's just a little laid back. And you want to make sure that all the clothes are color coordinated. Maybe you watched, the Spark Joy. I can't remember her name, the Spark Joy, and so all your clothes are folded and it's stacked up and it's neatly. Maybe you're the type of person that you need to sleep and the kitchen needs to be organized, right? The kitchen needs to be clean, the dishes put away, and your spouse is like, I'll get to it tomorrow, and it drives you crazy. Maybe the issue, maybe that my spouse will never change. He can't seem to make the bed. He can't keep his side of the room clean. Always, Amanda, it drives me crazy. Why can't you just put the dirty clothes in the hamper. Why do you have to put it on the floor? It's literally 2 feet away from you. Maybe it's you. What about this? Time together. Oh man, maybe your spouse wants to, be going out with his friends, or maybe your spouse has this thing where he has me time, where he just, I don't know, Renee likes to have his me time, where he's just working on the ATV, or he's working on a go-kart, or he's working on something, right? But maybe you very much appreciate we time, and you're constantly wanting to spend time with your spouse. You want to go to the beach, you want to go to the picnic, you want to go to the park, you just want to spend we time, and your husband is like, well, I want to hang out with my friends, and I want to do my hobbies, and I want to do. Maybe the conflict is on time together. One spouse wants me time, and the other spouse wants we time, and usually there's conflict there. These are things where a couple are saying, Amanda, will my spouse ever change? Another one, oh man, extended family. There's so much conflict where one spouse wants to spend every second of every minute of every day of every week with their family, and the other spouse maybe does not. I had a couple who recently started to do sessions, and that was the problem. The problem was this culture difference. Amanda, all he wants to do is he wants to just spend time with us and our family. I want to go to my parents' house and to the cousins and to the aunts, and the husband saying, are you kidding me? But when is enough? I get it. You want to spend time with your family, but can we just spend also time with us? We don't have to go over their house every single weekend. I'm sick and tired of seeing your mom. I'm sick and tired of seeing your dad. And finally, there's so many more. I gave you guys just some, and maybe if you have found yourself and what I've just been talking about, if you're on Instagram, give me a thumbs up. And if you're bold and courageous, and I hope you are, tell me which one you found yourself in. Punctuality, finances, maybe your spouse is extrovert, you're introvert, the cleanliness one, the time together. I want me time. And your spouse is like, no, let's spend some time together. Maybe it's the extended family. And here's one, that's a big one. Parenting style. One wants to have a more authoritarian parenting style. The other one is more permissive and more laid back. This drives people crazy. And the question is, will my spouse ever change? So, Renee, can you look there on Instagram to see if anyone gave a thumbs up if they have found themselves there? Renee's taking a look. We got thumbs up, yes? Okay, and so here's the thing, guys. As we wrestle with will my spouse ever change? Know that these issues, these problems, we'll call them problems, perpetual problems that keep happening over and over and over again that cause this question. It happens in all marriages. Whether it's abundant or mediocre, you will have times where you will say, this problem keeps coming up and it does not get resolved. Now, the secret is this: how you choose to discuss and manage these problems will make all of the difference. Your husband who never can wash his plate, who eats and always leaves his dishes in the dirty sink. Well, it's how you choose to talk about, manage these problems is what will make all the difference. Because this thought, will this person ever change, will keep coming up, will always come up, I should say, no matter if your marriage is mediocre or if it's abundant. Oh, here's a good one that I almost forgot to mention. One of the will my spouse ever change is also the conversation on sex, right? The conversation on sex. Typically, generally, now this is not the rule, okay, but generally speaking, the husband is usually not satisfied with the amount of times he's having sex during the week. And his question, Renee's nodding yes. Renee's always going to nod yes for that. The husband is usually not satisfied with how many times him and his wife have sex per week. So Renee's giving me a thumbs up. And so how we talk about these things, maybe Renee's question is, will Amanda ever change? Will I ever get to the place where I'm having as much sex as I want? Okay? And so look, some of these things, if it keeps happening, that the issue, that the question continues to arrive whenever you see one of these that I just listed. If the question is like, will my spouse ever change? If it keeps coming up over and over and over and over and over and over again, it could be that it's a difference in personality. It's a problem that you will always have in your marriage. You know, Dr. John Gottman, he says this, that 69% of relationship conflict is unsolvable, and that only 31% of problems within a relationship is actually solvable. And I don't think we should be scared about that, because I think it's great that we married people that are not exactly like us, that people are different. They have different personalities. They have different temperaments. God created it just this way. You know why? Because marriage is the greatest school. It is the training ground for character development. And if your spouse was just like you, well, your character would not be developed. So again, it's how we manage these problems, that keep coming up over and over and over again, that will make all of the difference. So now look, I'm going to go to one of the questions that I said I had for you guys. And one of the question is this: where does the change start? Where should the change start, Amanda? I feel like my spouse will never change. If change is going to start, if change is going to take place, where then should change start? So, of course, if you've been following me, you know what I'm going to say. Where change should start is that change should start with you. Here's the thing. Your spouse is a grown adult, meaning that I don't believe that you should use fear, control, or manipulation to make anyone do anything. Your spouse has autonomy. Your spouse is a moral agent who is able to make decisions for themselves. Not always will they make the best decisions or the decision that you would like them to make, but they need to be able to make decisions. They need to be able to make decisions and be responsible for their decisions. Because here's the thing, there's a lot of people who are very dependent of other people making decisions for them, and it victimizes them. It makes them indecisive human beings, and we don't want that. We want people to be able to make good decisions on their own. So, if you want your spouse to change, or if you fear that they will never change, first the change needs to begin with you. And why do I say that? Well, human beings, they are more apt to follow the lead of our actions than the lead of our words. If you missed the live that we did 2 weeks ago when I talked about influencing your spouse and I talked about leadership, one of the things that I said was important is that we need to influence our spouse through service and sacrifice. So if you're upset that your spouse isn't working out, all you do is you work out. You take care of your health, you take care of your diet, and through your behavior, you are going to influence your spouse. Don't manipulate them, don't try to control them, don't try to force them. You simply model the behavior that you want them to do. I'll tell it to you in this way. You know, Jesus, he came to Lazarus. Remember when Lazarus was already on the tomb? He was, dead. Several days had gone by, and he finally shows up, and the sisters meet him. Mary and Martha, their brother Lazarus, has just died. Well, hasn't just died, has been died for quite some time. But when he was very sick, they told Jesus, hey, the one whom you love, Jesus and Lazarus were very close friends, is very sick. Can you please come that you would heal him? Well, Jesus kind of waits around, and he tells his disciples, oh, we don't need to go just now. This is going to be for the glory of God. The disciples are kind of confused because they're thinking, hey, Jesus, we're really not that far. We can get there pretty quickly. In just a few hours, we could be there. And Jesus lingered. Jesus waited. And Mary and Martha were looking to the horizon thinking, just any second now, Jesus will show up. And nothing. No Jesus. Well, days go by and Lazarus died. And he's already wrapped up like a mummy and he's inside the tomb. He is dead. People are there mourning and crying and weeping, and Jesus shows up. Mary and Martha run to him and, they say, Jesus, if only you would have been here, our brother would have not died. And Jesus says, hey, don't worry, I'm the resurrection and the life. I can do something in your situation right now. I can do something. I am powerful. I am the great I am. And so Jesus looks to the multitude who's weeping and crying, who's feeling like they can't do anything. They feel as though they're powerless. And maybe that's the situation you find yourself in right now. Maybe you feel powerless, that your spouse will never change, that your marriage will never change. Well, here's the thing. Don't become indifferent. Don't become complacent. Don't be okay with your current situation. Don't roll over. Don't be satisfied with a mediocre marriage. You can do something to help. Not to change your spouse, because we can't even change ourselves. You cannot change your spouse. Let's get that out of the way. You cannot change your spouse. What you can do is you can motivate, you can empower, you can help, you can be accountability, you can share research, you can hand a book, you can facilitate, create an environment for change to happen, but you yourself cannot change anyone because, shoot, we can't even change ourselves. But here's what Jesus does. Jesus shows up on scene and he gives a command. He says, remove the stone. Jesus says, remove the stone. Oh, the people start to doubt. They start to question, what do you mean remove the stone? It smells. He's dead. What are you going to do? We're not going to remove the stone. And Jesus gives the command again, remove the stone. When those people were willing to remove the stone, when they did what they could do, Jesus went in and did what they could not do, which was to raise Lazarus. Here is the message to you, spouse that feels, my husband will never change. What do I do? Right? The question, where does change begin? How do I get this person to change? You cannot change anyone. However, you can remove certain stones in your life so that as you remove your stones, as you choose and decide and will to fix some of the things that are going on with you, you could very well be removing stones so that Jesus can work through you, use you, work his purposes through you, that you would be a powerful influence in the lives of your husband and in your wife. Is that clear? Does that make sense? And so the focus should not be, will my spouse ever change? But the focus should be, in what ways can I change that Jesus could work through me, that my spouse would be motivated, would be empowered through the changes seen in me, that he would also want to taste and see that the Lord is good. Okay, let's keep going on here. One of the things that it's important for me to mention is that as these problems come up in your relationship, we need to make sure that you are speaking about it, managing it, or talking about it in a way that is not harmful to your marriage. So for example, if you're talking about this problem, my spouse is never going to change, my spouse is never going to change, and the other person feels rejected, or you're constantly attacking their character, this is an issue, this is a problem. We don't attack character, we attack behavior. Jesus would say it like this: I hate the sin, but I love the sinner. Does it happen where you're talking about my spouse will never change, and whatever the problem is, whether it's finances, whether it's family, whether it's sex, whether it's sort of socialism, and you're introvert, he's extrovert, whatever it is, does it feel like the conversation goes nowhere? Does it also feel that whenever you're talking about this, that you guys seem that you've gotten to an impasse where no longer you're listening to each other, you're constantly defending yourself, you're not allowing yourself to be influenced, and it almost seems like you guys are now, instead of being on the same team, you've made each other into a villain, and now you're fighting against each other instead of fighting with each other and for your marriage. Remember, if the same thing keeps coming up over and over and over and over again, it could be a difference in personality. So we need to make sure that we identify what is the core issue of what you are fighting about, what you are arguing about. Let me give it to you in this way. Imagine husband and wife. Wife comes home and husband is watching TV. And she immediately says, all you do is you watch TV. I hate that TV. Get rid of that TV. I can't stand that TV. Well, it seems that the solution would be simple. We get rid of the TV. There's no more problem. Well, that's a very superficial issue of what is going on. What is going on, the core issue, that is a superficial answer. Oh, just get rid of the TV and the problem is solved. right? But really what is going on is not the TV in itself, is that the wife wants to spend more time with her husband. But because of the way she's approaching him, I hate this TV. All you care about is TV. You only care about yourself. You're so selfish. I'm always home. I come home late from work. I'm tired. I'm hungry. And I find you in the same exact place, always in front of that TV. And what do you think the husband is going to do? The husband's going to start defending himself. I'm not always in front of the TV. Are you kidding me? I had a long day of work. I'm just sitting in here. I literally just want to veg out. Just give me a second. I'm tired. I don't want to think. I don't want to talk. I just want to sit here. Right? And really the core issue is that the wife wants to have more time with her husband. Maybe it's a me time versus a we time situation. I literally had this question. Look at this. Amanda, I'm tired of my husband getting home from work, sitting on the couch, ignoring me and watching TV every day. I've been with the kids all day and I just want quality time with him. We've discussed this before. He says he's going to change, but after a week he goes back to doing the same exact thing. So the husband thinks that the issue is the TV. But really, the issue is not the TV. The issue is about spending quality time. The wife has not a problem with the husband watching TV. If he spends 30 minutes watching TV and 30 minutes spending quality time with her, whether it's over dinner, hey honey, I'm going to finish watching this game right here, and then we're going to sit down, we're going to have dinner together, and I cannot wait to hear about your day. Problem solved. Guess what? He doesn't need to throw out the TV. So you see, we need to figure out what is the core issue. Identify the core issue. Don't be stuck on the superficial. Now, the other thing that's important to remember is what psychologist Dan Weil says. He says every relationship has two problems, the actual problem and how partners address the problem. Be patient, be compassionate, be long-suffering. Think to yourself this. I remember when I was in school, and one of the classes that we had was a class on sort of how AA works, right? Alcoholics Anonymous. And a lot of us are saying, oh my goodness, if something is so harmful, we get it. Addiction is very powerful, but if something is so harmful like alcohol, if it's ruining your job, if it's ruining your family, like for those who are not addicted to alcohol, it seems crazy how someone wouldn't just stop knowing how harmful it would be to them, to their relationship, etc. And so the professor said, well, in order for you to truly understand how difficult it is to change this addiction, to stop this addiction, I want all of you for the rest of the semester to not eat sugar. Oh man, as you can imagine, everyone freaked out. What do you mean not eat sugar? Sugar is everywhere. And that's exactly how the alcoholic feel. It's everywhere. It's tempting. It's everywhere you go. It's on the billboards. It's on the commercials. It's at the stores. And so when we went that whole semester, and not everyone was successful, okay? When we went that whole semester without sugar, we started to get a glimpse of how addicting and how painful and how hard it is. And so one of the things that I would recommend you do, get to know the pain. Get to know why it is so hard for this change to happen. Again, there are two problems in every relationship, the actual problem and how partners address the problem. We need to be better at addressing the problem in a way that will not attack anyone's character, but create an environment where we facilitate change to happen. And this goes to my next question, which is this. My spouse is never going to change because everyone in his family is the exact same way. Now that's interesting. And here we go. Truly, if your husband, if your wife grew up in a family with a certain dynamic, as you can imagine, it's going to be really, really hard for change to automatically happen. I spoke to a husband this morning actually, and he was telling me how him and his wife, they were discussing something along the lines of this. She had sent a text message about something really important that had happened in her life. I just said that weird. She had sent a text message of something really important that happened in her life. And she put it in a family group text. And the husband, he was at that time playing soccer with his friends, and so he didn't realize the text message. Well, when he got home and he started looking through the text message, she looked at the wife and he says, hey, is there something you want to tell me? And she goes, no, I said it in the group text. Well, he thought, hey, this is something so important. This is something so awesome. This is such a huge accomplishment. Like, why didn't you come and tell me directly? Why would you text it to me? Because his family dynamic works different than her family dynamic. She thought, hey, yeah, it's important, but I put it in the group chat. You could have congratulated me through there. Here's the long story short. Long story short is that he says, well, okay, well, next time, you have something important to tell, like, can you just tell me? And she was saying, well, I thought that telling you through there was enough. So there was sort of they disagreed. Okay, they disagreed in the way in which information should be passed. Well, the husband thought, okay, we disagreed. Next time, tell me in person. Well, wife went to sleep feeling unhappy and unsatisfied with the way that it was discussed. The husband thought, okay, great, we talked about it. We could talk about it later, but it's late and I'm going to go to sleep and that's it. No problem. Well, the wife actually went to sleep hurt. She went to sleep hurt because the husband was upset that he felt that she was prioritizing more the extended family than him, and that's not at all what she was trying to do. Well, she was conflicted with this because she thought he was upset, and really he went to sleep as a baby, and she kind of tossed and turned all night long. And the husband wakes up in the morning, looks at her and says, hey, honey, how did you sleep? And she goes, well, I didn't sleep at all because we didn't discuss. And he goes, what do you mean you didn't discuss? He says, well, we were having a conversation and I feel like you were upset at me. And he's like, well, no, like I'm over it. It doesn't matter. And then he's like, wait, you really didn't sleep all night? And then he says, you know what, Amanda, it's so funny because my sister and I, we would fight all the time, like cats and dogs. And after 5 minutes, we would completely forget what we were fighting about. Whereas my wife, she likes to really talk things out. And so I forgot that because it was at night that she would literally be awake all night long thinking about this if I didn't discuss it with her. But because I'm so used to the household that I grew up in with my sister, who also is a woman, but we fight, she gets over it, and that's it. And the next day, everyone is all lovey-dovey. For my wife, she wants to talk it out. And she wants to make sure that, she understands me, that I understand her so that it doesn't happen again. And so here's one of these things where my spouse is never going to change because everyone in his family is that way. Well, no, here's a husband saying, well, my family definitely functions in this way. And at times I forget, even though I've been married for so long, truly sometimes I resort back to what I grew up with. But when I turned over to her and she said I didn't sleep at all, I thought, oh man, I'm sorry. And he's gotten better. Has he gotten perfect at it? Absolutely not. Do they sometimes have disagreements and arguments about it? Absolutely. So yes, there are some things that we grew up with in our family that we're going to have to be very patient with each other. And here's more. Some things might never change. I still haven't gotten Renee to floss before he brushes his teeth. He flosses after he brushes his teeth. Such a small example, but some things are a personality thing. Just this week, Renee and I were going to start sort of remodeling some things in the kitchen, of which I'm really excited about. I'm not creative. I hate interior design. Can't stand it, but I'm just excited for things to change, for things to look different. And so I've recruited all of my friends to help me, and I've actually kind of passed on the job to my mom. I said, Mom, you love doing this stuff. You do it. And Renee doesn't really care much for it too, but I'm excited. And so I came to Renee and I said, hey, are you excited about, remodeling the kitchen? I'm super excited about it. And Renee's like, honestly, if I could be 100% honest with you, I am not excited whatsoever. Could care less, not excited about it. He's like, what excites me is ATVs. And so, but here's the thing. Although he's not excited as I am about remodeling the kitchen, what I appreciate is that he says this, but listen, tell me all of the appliances you want. Tell me what is your dream, and Renee is like the best at scouring the internet, okay? And so I said, okay, I really want one of those farm sinks, and I don't know how to pronounce the brand. Do you know the brand, Renee? Kohler. I really wanted a farm sink, and our friends had gotten a Kohler brand, and they said it was the best, and he had done all the research. He's very much like Renee. He did all the research, and he said, oh, Kohler is the best. Well, Kohler is $1,000. And I was like, oh, man, that's going to be so expensive. I don't know if I want to spend $1,000 on a sink. Renee's like, don't worry. I'm going to find you a Kohler sink that's not going to be $1,000. And you better believe he found it. He went on Facebook Marketplace. So random. He went on there. He found this guy who I guess works with construction or whatever, there was a house that he did a job for that didn't want or didn't need the Kohler sink, brand new. He was going to install it in his house, but he didn't want to go through the hassle, and so he was selling it for $350. So do you see what I'm saying? These are the things. Now I'm not gonna change Renee's desire, and I want him to be just as excited as I am to do the kitchen. No, I don't need him to. But in his own way, without me changing him, in his own way, he's going to be excited, but in a different way. And his excitement is like, hey, I found you exactly what you wanted and for lower price. Remember, men are fixers. I came to him with a problem, which is I really want this Kohler sink, but I don't want to pay $1,000. And he found a solution. And if I would get upset because Renee is not excitable, I spend the rest of my life upset because Renee, it kind of is very stoic in expression. And so I might get fired up and super excited about things. And he's just like, yeah, that's pretty cool. That's pretty awesome. If I were to get upset with Renee because I'm an extrovert and he's an introvert, and he's never going to change, and he's never going to have all... one of the things I remember in marriage that I would get so upset with Renee's father, he's just, oh my goodness, I love talking about the Bible stuff with him. And Renee's dad is a reader, so he'd read all these books and I'd read all these books and we'd get together and we'd talk. And I also have different friends, different guy friends, honestly, that I can do that with. They're readers, and so they read all this stuff and I read all this stuff. I have a friend that I talk to him on the phone every other week, and all we talk about is Bible stuff. And I love the conversations that I have with this friend of mine. And he reads all the same amount of books that I read, and he, what's it called? When someone tells someone to read something, he recommends. Yes, he recommends. Look at him. He recommends books that I read, and they're fantastic, and we go back and forth. And it's an awesome conversation. Well, if I come to Renee and be like, oh, Renee, I'm super upset because I can't have these conversations with you about Bible topics, and I can't. Well, if I do that, and if I kind of force Renee to be and to change in someone he's not, that's not cool. I read that there's this quote here that I put down for you guys. Look at what it says. This: most of the reason relationships fail is because partners do not want to accept their lover wholeheartedly. Rather, they accept their partner under the condition that they'll change over time, and that's a recipe for failure. Don't accept your partner with, oh, well, he'll change this and then everything is going to be better. No, absolutely not. And I remember in the beginning of marriage, I'd say, oh man, Renee, I wish you were more like your dad, that you could read more. Renee's not a reader. That you could just read more so that we could have these conversations and these deep conversations about the Bible. Could you read? And Renee would get so upset about that because, well, he's not his dad. And, if he's not as sassy as I am, but I would have been like, well, if you want me to be my dad, you should have married my dad, right? I'm not my dad. But he's not as sassy as I am. But anyways, the point is this. If I have kept doing that in my marriage with Renee, I would just get frustrated. I want him to change and I want to be something else. No. And so, we've created a way, and Renee knows that I really need these sort of deep conversation about the Bible. And just this morning, he sent me a little Bible verse, and he kind of sent what he got out of the verse, or sometimes he'll say a verse and be like, hey, what do you think about this verse? And I know he does that because he knows I love that. I love going back and forth, and he's always so receptive. I kid you not. Sometimes we'll be laying in bed and I'll be reading a book, and he'll be listening to some YouTube video about something. Renee knows how to do everything after a YouTube video. And he'll be there focusing on a YouTube video, and I'll just tap him on the shoulder. I'll just look at him and I'll be like, can I read this for you? It's so interesting. And he's like, yes. Oh my goodness, I lose count at how many times I'm reading something. I'll be like, can I share with you this? This is so cool. This was so awesome. Can I share it with you? And he takes it off and he listens and he hears. See, I didn't change him. He's not a reader. He just isn't. But he would also have a very miserable marriage if he would get upset that I wasn't as excited about math and about engineering and about whatever car thing that he's working on. So don't try to change your spouse. Try to find aspects of their personality, of their temperament, of their character that you absolutely love. And of course, if it's something that is damaging to them, then create an environment where change is facilitated. Don't force anything down their throat. They're grown-ups. They're going to have to make their own decision. But remember, we're principle and preference. I had a wife, and I thought she handled this beautifully. Her husband she caught her husband watching pornography, and it's something that he did his entire life. She got married knowing this, and in the beginning she was actually complacent with it. They watched together. Well, after some time, she decided, hey, I don't want to watch pornography anymore. This is a decision that she made for herself. But she knew that although she could change her behavior, she could not change his behaviors. And so she created boundaries and limits, and her boundary and her limit was, listen, I'm not going to engage with you in that any longer. And she gave him his space, and she kept modeling this behavior and loving him, and modeling this behavior and loving him. Well, she obviously knew that pornography would not be good for his brain, for him as a person, and for their relationship, and so she prayed and prayed and prayed. Well, not only was this husband watching, pornography online for free, but he also was spending a lot of their money on acquiring these things. And sure enough, the wife says, listen, a boundary that I'm going to set is I don't think that we should spend our hard-earned money on buying this stuff and putting money in an industry that, yes, I know you're watching, grown-ups here, but an industry where also people are abused and there's children in here, and this is not okay. And so he agreed that he was not going to spend their money any longer on this, and that he was just going to find it online for free. And she just kept praying and praying, setting her boundaries, setting her limits, and just being patient with him. Because here's the thing. They entered marriage, both of them watching it. And all of a sudden, just because she changed, she couldn't expect that, the next day he was also going to do it. Well, long story short, because she kept modeling and loving him and being gracious with him and being kind with him and being compassionate to him, soon enough, what do you think the husband did? The husband also stopped watching porn. So that's why the first step, the first initiative is to change yourself. Usually the very things that we don't like in our spouse are things that we are upset that we are not doing. Sometimes when I say, Renee, I'm so frustrated with you, like, why aren't we working out anymore? And I kind of give him a hard time. And usually it's the case because I haven't been working out and I'm frustrated with myself. And so I sort of deflect towards him. Let's look at another question here that I got. One of the questions was this: should I help my husband in something that is his personal thing? And I think I answered that with the pornography thing. It was his thing, but his thing was affecting her. And remember, one thing is a difference in preferences, right? A difference in personality, a difference in one likes to read, one doesn't like to read. Another thing entirely is a difference in principle. We need to make sure that we are obeying the commandments of God. And so we're not flexible with principles. However, all of these things that I just mentioned to you, punctuality, finances, cleanliness, time together, extended family, parenting, all of these things, it's not, will my spouse ever change? The question is, will I ever change and create an environment where it will facilitate my spouse to change? And here's the thing. I'm going to love my spouse, period, because the Bible says the love of Christ transforms. And we need to start fighting more battles on our knees. Don't force, don't manipulate, don't control. Let's see the next one. How should I help? And I think, I'm answering these questions without even looking at these questions. The last one I have here is this. My husband makes promises and never follows through. One of these promises was to take me on a second honeymoon, and it never happened. Well, listen, be happy you went on the first honeymoon. I'm just kidding. Look, yes, my husband makes promises and never follows through. How would we solve this? So the first thing I would do if Renee made a promise and never followed through is I would express that I was upset about that. What I wouldn't do is, if he said, hey, you seem upset, is everything okay? Yeah, everything is fine. I wouldn't pretend like everything was fine if everything was not fine. Remember, men's brain are different than our brains. Men, and I'm going to say it again, at times they're clueless, and I don't mean to bash them, and I don't mean, to be disrespectful here, but literally they don't have a clue. My husband says it all the time. Amanda, please just tell me exactly what you want. Tell me exactly how it is. Don't do well, I'm not upset, but I'm really upset. or I am upset, but I'm not. Don't play those games, because genuinely, they don't know. They don't beat around the bush. And so the first thing I would do is I would express that I am upset that you promised me that we were going to go on the second honeymoon and we didn't go on the second honeymoon. The second thing I would do is I would want to understand why we didn't go on the second honeymoon, because it could be, and again, look, right now the surface is my husband doesn't take me on the second honeymoon, but there might be so much behind why he hasn't taken you on the second honeymoon. I know for one husband where his wife, similar situation, his wife wanted to go on the trip and he promised her the trip, but they didn't go on the trip. Well, during therapy, the husband revealed that, and in tears, the reason that he hadn't taken her, and he was feeling like such a failure, he was feeling like he let her down, he was feeling like the lowest of low, was because he had gotten into sort of a bad financial position in work. He had made a deal that was awful. He had lost tons of money. No one knew about it. And his wife just kept, he obviously knew she was upset. She had even told him, hey, I'm upset you didn't take me on this trip and this and this. He was already feeling the worst, and he sort of kept ignoring her. Remember, oftentimes men ignore you, not because they're being mean about it and they want to ignore you, but it's because if a man feels like he can't handle the situation or solve the problem, remember Bob the Builders, he retreats. He feels so low. He feels so frustrated. He feels almost so disgusted with himself that he would rather just retreat. I mean, obviously, this makes the wife very upset, because when you retreat when a woman's trying to talk to you, I mean, those are like fighting words. And so the wife was like, why didn't you tell me? And he's like, well, this trip was so important to you. I was trying to figure out any way possible to make this trip happen. And she's like, well, the trip was important because I want to spend time with you, because I want to get away from our kids and just have us time. And I want to, reminisce on the good old days when it was just me and you. But if I knew that all of this was going on, and so that's the second thing I do. So first, be very clear if you're upset, if you're not upset. Number two, try to find out the reason why this trip is not happening. Try to find out the reason behind why this trip is not happening. And then, if it's the case where your husband always makes promises and there's no follow through, let's try to see if this is a cycle. Maybe it's a cycle where his father made promises and his father didn't follow through, and this was passed on. So maybe this is sort of a generational curse that needs to be broken. And so maybe therapy would be useful in this moment. And again, you continuously model that. When you say something, you follow through. Literally what we do with kids, right? Me and Renee try to do this with River and Reed. If we promise a good thing, we're going to follow through. If we promise a bad thing, we're going to follow through. Yesterday, actually, I was super dirty and I was putting the boys to sleep, and they love for me to crawl in the crib with them. And I said, I'm very dirty. And this is a really weird thing, but Reed, to make sure that I'm dirty, he likes to smell my armpit. It's disgusting. And he's like, are you dirty? And he's like, lift up your arm. Let me smell your armpit. And he's like, ooh, go take a shower. And so anyways, and I told him, I said, tomorrow I promise I'll jump in the crib. And I was also dirty today, but I had to follow through, and I jumped into their crib. I was filthy, and they love, I sing this verse to them that they love. It's, the Lord keep you and the Lord bless you and keep you. Oh my goodness. Make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. I forget. I cannot, huh? There's some questions. Okay, anyways, I won't sing the verse to you because it'll be awful, but maybe I'll have Renee sing it to you next time. Yes, send questions.
Well, here's a comment. When my husband does not support me in front of the kids, wasting time with not important things like movies or shows.
Wait, let's take one at a time. So one of the things was when my husband will my husband ever change because he never supports me with my kids, right? The question can sort of be like that. That's a big one, okay? And that would fall into the parenting style, right? Where one parent is more authoritarian, maybe one parent wants to be more permissive. Or this is also a parenting sort of style talk where one parent feels like I'm not being supported by my spouse in front of my children. Now, oh man, if you haven't watched it, you have to watch this. Look at this. Absolutely, spouses need to be on the same team in front of the children. Okay, they absolutely do. You need to be on the same team. I know there are some times that Renee does something with River and Reed that I don't necessarily agree on, but in that moment, I follow through with his leadership and vice versa. And then after, I'll come into the bedroom and say, hey, I didn't really like how you dealt with that. Or vice versa. He'll come to me and say, hey, I didn't really like how you dealt with that. Because we are on the same team. So what I want you to be thinking about, wife or husband who asked that, who stated that, who made that comment, is this. Focus on the reason why you guys aren't on the same page and why you guys aren't on the same team. Because right now it's being evident in front of the children, but the children is just a symptom. It's just an opportunity for this being on different page to be coming out. Does that make sense? So right now, the children are sort of exposing the fact that you two are not in agreement. But figure out why you're not in agreement. Why is it that your husband has a hard time allowing you to influence him? Or vice versa. And at times, husbands will have a harder time allowing their wives to influence them, which is why this could be one of those situations where some research could be beneficial. Research shows that husbands who allow their wives to influence them have better marriages and have higher emotional intelligence. So this could be one of those times. And also, here's another thing. Figure out why your husband does this, and then will to love him, serve and sacrifice for him, because when you create influence is created as we serve and sacrifice for the people we love, you will have leadership over your husband and wife. Husbands have leadership, right? He's the head of the household. But wives, we can also have leadership over our husbands. We can also have influence over our husbands as we serve, honor, and sacrifice for them. And remember, how do we influence people? Through service and sacrifice. But you know what the powerful thing about influence is? We influence people by who we are, by our character. Oh, you have to watch this. You have to watch this live because I can't go on a tangent on it. But basically, power you get through fear, control, and manipulation because you're stronger, you're more powerful, or you're the dad, or whatever. But influence, and this is what wives need to cultivate, you can influence your husband by your character through prayer. The Bible says that the prayer of a righteous man, the prayer of a righteous woman avails much. Next one.
My wife spends too much time on social media, shows, movies. How can I help her? I guess knowing that this is hurting her.
Very good. That's a very, very good one. So my wife spends a lot of time on social media, this and that. I actually had a conversation with the husband a few times, 2 days ago. So there could be two scenarios here. The first scenario could be that there's something going on with your wife. So instead of coming home, so I'll tell you the scenario that happened. The husband would come home. He's a very hardworking man. He'd come home. The wife is a stay-at-home mom. The house would be a complete mess. The food wasn't made, and he would come home with a grumpy face. Are you kidding me? This house is a mess. Dishes everywhere. Food isn't made. So he would go after this. But look. This is a symptom. Behind that was that his wife was very depressed and that she needed help. She had trauma that happened in the past, and after he realized the psychological damages that it did to her brain, he became more empathetic with that situation. But here's the thing. The husband would come home and he would say, this house is a mess, the kitchen is this. But behind this was, oh my goodness, I'm so worried about my wife because I know this isn't good for her. I know that there's something wrong, but instead of him going after, how am I going to say this? Instead of him, Renee, I moved forward. Did it mess up my thing here? Don't be upset with me. Instead of him going after, hey, honey, is there something wrong? Can I help you? Can I support you? He would come home grumpy that the house was a mess. And his wife would shut down even more because she felt that what was more important to him was not her well-being, but it was that the house was not clean. But the husband then told me, Amanda, I don't care about the stupid house. I don't care that the dishes are not clean. I care about what is going on with her, that she's spending all day in her bed. But he didn't ask her that because it was a scary thing to go there. You know why? Because he says, Amanda, I felt like if I went there and asked her, hey, honey, are you depressed? Are you upset? That if she said yes, I wouldn't know how to handle it. And remember, men are fixers. And he thought she was going to tell me something that I wouldn't be able to fix. And it drove me crazy. Do you see that? Oh man, Satan is so good at making us argue at times, even though both of our hearts are in the right place. And so get to know the reason. So maybe, I'm not saying that this is the case for you. I don't know your wife. I don't know you. But maybe this is the case where your wife is dealing with something and she's numbing out with social media. Maybe she's having a hard time with her relationships. Maybe it's her job. Maybe it's her children. Maybe it's in a relationship with you. Find out why your wife is numbing out on social media, on TV. Now, if it's nothing about that, okay, if she's not numbing out, then try to figure out, try to create an environment where your wife will want to spend time with you. Because sometimes men, women, they come home and they're in such a bad mood. They're so cranky. I have a wife who all she wants is quality time with her husband. But she's so nasty in the way she wants it. You have to spend time with me. You have to spend time with me. You have to spend time with me. And he's honestly saying, like, Amanda, I want to spend time with her, but when she acts like that, I purposely choose to not spend time with her. So it could be for these two reasons. Maybe, facilitate, take her out, do something fun together. Maybe she doesn't want to spend time with you because you're not being fun to spend time with. So that, or see what's behind this pain. See why she's numbing out with social media. All right, you got another one for me, Renee? I hope that answered. Let me know if that answered your question.
Come back to me.
Okay, I'm going to come back to Renee. I do want to read you know me and quotes. I love quotes. I'm sorry. 9 minutes. So is there a question? If not, I'm going to read my quote and then I'm going to land this plane. No questions. Okay, very good. For those of you who asked questions, thank you. I hope it helped. We can dive into it a little further. If you feel like your question was not answered, or if it was partially answered, or you just want it to be further answered, please send me a private message and I would love to answer your questions. I'd love to answer your questions because honestly, it helps your marriage, but then it also helps my marriage. And I want to make sure I say good stuff because my husband's listening. And so I want him to hear these things so that my marriage will always stay abundant, just like I want yours to. So look at this. This is a man, a doctor named Stan Tatkin. And he says this: if we did an autopsy on all failed relationships, the number of couples where at least one of the partners was ambivalent, either not in at all, either not all in, or waiting for their partners to change, would be very high. So look at, I just read that poorly. But basically what he's saying is, if we did an autopsy of all failed relationships, two things would happen. Either there are husbands and wives who are not all in, basically all their eggs are not in that basket, so they're not fully committed, they're not in it to win it, or they're somehow waiting around for their partners to change. And so they've become indifferent, or they're waiting for a miracle, of which, as you know, you cannot change anyone. Look at this. If you don't or can't accept your partner as they are right now, without cherry picking the parts you like, you're already in trouble. Meaning this: Renee, I am so committed to you. And Renee would say to me, Amanda, I'm so committed to you that I know that God still has work to do in your heart, because he has work to do in my heart. And as he's working in your heart, I will be loving you along the way. This is the attitude we'll have. We're not going to have the attitude of, I'm just going to wait around and I'm just going to be nasty and mean and unloving and I'm not going to respect you and honor you until you change, because surely that's not the attitude to have. And look at this. Nobody signs up for marriage because they want to be changed by their partner. It doesn't work. Ever. Go all in or go home. Marriage and commitment can only work if we accept each other wholeheartedly. And as we accept each other wholeheartedly, change begins to happen. You know why? Because when we love each other wholeheartedly, it means that we are serving and sacrificing. And so when we serve and sacrifice, we have influence over our husband, over our wives. And as they see Jesus transform and change our character, this becomes powerful evidence, a powerful testimony that Jesus can also change their character. So what are you waiting for? The Bible says the love of God constrains us. So love that crazy man. Love that crazy woman. Like a husband told me this week, oh, I was so proud of him. He says, Amanda, my marriage is awful. All we do is fight and bicker and fight and bicker. And Amanda, I want to throw in the towel. And this is what he says, Amanda, humanly speaking, I want to give up. I'm sick and tired. I don't want to do it. I don't want to fight for my marriage. However, he says, because I am a disciple of Jesus Christ, because I am willing to do his will for my life and not my own will, I am going to fight for this woman. I want to learn to love her again, and I am willing to do whatever it takes. I am committed to her. I am committed to her. I don't know if she's going to change. I don't know if she's going to do therapy. I don't know if she's going to follow through, but it doesn't matter. I am going to change. Because in the end of the day, I want to have peace when I look into the eyes of my children and say, I did everything that I could. All right? And here it is, guys. We, as you know, are a family here because we are trying to transform marriages from mediocre to abundant. And I want you guys to join in the 17%. What is the 17%? 17% are couples who are currently living out satisfying, happy, abundant marriages. And here's the thing, the 17%, they also have this, will my spouse ever change? They think about it, but here's the thing, when these problems come up that come up over and over and over and over again, they just handle it with laughter, they handle it with love, they handle it with joy, with patience, they handle it being on the same exact team. Abundant marriages doesn't mean that no problems ever come up. Of course they do. Of course they come up. But when these problems come up, you handle it together. You handle it committed. You handle it saying, woman, I'm never going to leave you. Crazy guy, I'm here for it. I'm all in. I'm all in. And keep following us on social media, on all these platforms, because man, something, I told you guys a few weeks ago, something exciting is happening. We are about to release our next group here, and I cannot wait to have some of you guys join us on this mission that God has given us towards abundant marriage. I want to be part of that 17%. And you know what the secret is? All you have to do is choose, decide. It's simple, but it's not easy. It's simple, but it's not easy. But we're going to do it together. All right? I'll see you guys next week, Thursday, 8:30 p.m.